In our last lesson, we talked about musical unity from the composer's point of view. In this lesson, we'll discuss how to develop a musical idea once it has been presented. In a sense, this means exploring what I think of as an idea's destiny. How will it evolve over time? I think of this a bit like developing a character in a novel. Once we meet a character, we're interested to see how they change over time in relation to various situations. The character may evolve gradually, or occasional sudden events may trigger bigger changes. The simplest musical parallel to this distinction is the one we've already mentioned between close and more distant variants of a motive. Close variants create more continuity, more remote variants are more surprising. In a piece of any length, both are necessary, but, as I explained in the last lesson, the closer variants tend to be more frequent, just so that the piece doesn't become audibly incoherent. The first and simplest kind of development of a musical idea is simply to compose several successive phrases based on close variants of the motive, or motives. When composing more than one phrase on the same material, it's very important to keep in mind what I call the yes-but kind of punctuation. This turns phrases into larger groups, organized by various degrees of punctuation, and it prevents the music from losing momentum, which is one of the most common problems in beginners' pieces. Here's an example. There are three phrases here, all based on the same motive and its close variants. The cadences are in measures 5, 10, and 18. Notice that the last one in measure 18 is the only one ending with a root position chord. Together with the thicker, lower texture, that makes it sound the most final, tying together the three phrases into one larger whole. This kind of development is most common when presenting a musical idea for the first time. It creates what we can call a fairly stable structure, where contrasts are not very strong. It's a good way to teach the listener an idea so they will recognize it when it occurs. But not all development takes place in such stable structures. In particular, the development sections of sonata forms are often characterized by opposition between musical ideas. This is rather like a novel, where one main character meets another, very different one, and their interactions form a different kind of development. Here's an example using the same idea we saw above, but now combined with another one. Here the idea from our first example alternates with another idea, first seen in measure 2. Notice how, starting in measure 9, the second idea, which was a bold contrast to the first, now mutates slowly toward the first idea. This kind of little transition is one of several interesting possibilities for development when working with two different ideas. Note that this kind of development usually occurs in a situation where both the ideas in question have already been presented and are familiar to the listener. This would not make a very successful opening for the piece. An interesting experiment to do with your musical ideas is to strongly change one salient dimension of the music, like register, meter, tempo, timbre articulation, texture, or dynamics. This can lead you to discover new aspects of your original idea that you would not have thought of. Here I've made a few such changes to the idea heard in our first example above. Although the derivation from the first idea is visually obvious, when we listened to these three examples, we're struck by the big differences in character compared to the first idea. In a larger piece, these more remote variants of the first motive could lead to interesting new characters. Now, within a stable structure, how can we give a sense the music isn't just going in circles around the same material? We'll talk about this in our next lesson on what I call progression.